All In Sports Network. We love sports.
How's it going, everybody? Ben Peck here, All In Aggies. We're back in 2025. Not sure if – no, we did something earlier this year, but we are back. First full week of 2025, getting set with the game of the year to this point. Not an exaggeration. Literally is reflecting on what was a magical night at Reed Arena, 80-60. Texas A&M takes down Texas. We'll break that game down. Have some thoughts from Buzz Williams. I believe Hayden Hefner as well. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about some spring semester sports. You know, spring semester is a magical time of year in Aggie land. As anyone who was around last year's knows, that's where the Aggies really shine. So we've got some preseason rankings out for baseball. They're pretty good. Also, women's tennis shout out. They're pretty good. You know, they are the national champions, by the way, if you weren't sure about that. But let's start with this game for Texas A&M. By the way, if you haven't already, help us out this new year. Please subscribe if you could. Like the video if you like this content. And by the way, this subscription, it don't cost you nothing. I got plenty of subscriptions that cost a lot. This one's free. It just helps curate, not just for you, but for everywhere. Help us spread not just Peck Reed propaganda internally. We need to spread Texas A&M propaganda to the world. So be sure to help us, like the video, subscribe, and give us your thoughts in the comment section. Okay, 80-60 Texas. My goodness, this game was so weird to me. It felt like the on one hand, it was dominating. It was suffocating. Texas couldn't do anything offensively. I'm looking at the stat sheet here. If you see me going back and forth, 34% from the field total for Texas, 7 of 26. That's 27% from three. They couldn't do anything defensively. But the thing I was going to say is for a 20-point win, as far as 20-point wins go, this was like a super, I don't want to say lackluster, but it was a weird game to be at because it never felt like A&M just ripped the lid off. Like they had the alley-oop at the end, which was nice. They had like a little mini Zurich Phelps run when he went and he, you know, got the bucket, got the steal, got the score. But A&M, I mean, their three-point shooting was like, I tweeted this out. A&M's three-point shooting was like your boy on Hinge on a Sunday night, 2 for 19. Like, it's probably worse than your boy. It may be about the same. But needless to say, it wasn't like A&M ever really had even a stretch of the game where you said, okay, you know, maybe it was kind of sluggish, rugged for most of it. But, like, there was that 4-minute stretch where they just were popping. They went off. Never really happened. It was what we see with Buzz Williams' teams: defense, free throws, offensive rebounds to a point. But even that wasn't overly dominant. I mean, 11 offensive rebounds, none from Anderson Garcia. You know, and then three-point shooting obviously was abysmal. The free throws were where A&M, I think, probably fit the profile that they have. And they played up to where they were 24 for 32, 24 for 32 compared to 17 for 20. But that disparity, 17-24 made free throws. That's not a huge disparity to make up for the fact that you're missing all these threes. You only had 5 extra shot opportunities from the field. Now, the difference, too, being A&M shot a lot better from 2. They were 47% on the night total. So I can't do math, but 2 for 19 from 3, 27 for 57 total. That's, let's do the math here. Bear with me. 25 for 48. So that's better than 50% from 2. So that was the difference, whereas Texas struggled inside, outside, didn't matter. But that's the kind of thing that this is the kind of game that epitomizes why Texas A&M is the number 10 team in the country, by the way, and going to be a difficult out regardless of where you see them in March, in January, February, SEC play. I was going to say non-conference. I don't know if they have any of those left, but needless to say, to have the outing you do. Now, let's put the 3-point shooting aside for a moment. It's sort of connected to this, but it's not entirely. Wade Taylor. There's a thought out there that as Wade goes, the Aggies go, which is not untrue. But Wade Taylor's night, by his standards, far from his best. 13 points, 4 for 12, 1 for 7 from 3. That's where I say they're sort of connected to the 3-point shooting, because as it's not so much as the Aggies go, Wade Taylor goes, the Aggies go. That might be true or not, but it is sort of, I will say, as Wade Taylor goes, the Aggies 3-point shooting goes. I think that's pretty true. And as the 3-point shooting goes, that, as we've talked about, can elevate this team from a good, gritty team that's tough, Sweet 16, can maybe give someone a tough matchup, to all of a sudden, if they're shooting like we saw the Nebraska game in the tournament last year where they were shooting the lights out. You get that team can beat anybody. The same could be said for anyone shooting at that clip. But with everything else A&M does well, that's going to be a problem. But Wade Taylor, by his standards, again, fairly unremarkable night. 13 points, like we said, struggled shooting. Now, I will say 3 assists, 1 turnover. And he did get to the line a couple times, 4 for 4. That is one area where A&M was helped out big time in this game. The turnovers, it's not a sexy category because it's things that don't happen. But 7 turnovers to 12 for Texas. Again, not a huge disparity. It's not like Texas was turning the ball over 22 times and you say, oh, wow, they just were wreaking havoc. They were wreaking havoc in a lot of different ways. A little bit of an edge on the offensive rebounds, a little bit of an edge on the turnovers, somewhat bigger, but a little bit of an edge on the free throws. 3-point shooting was only a little bit of an edge for Texas because of how well you defended them. It should, a normal team comes in, and if they shoot, 27%, by the way, is not good for 3, but it's not by 3-point shooting. You see a lot of teams that can survive a performance like that, but still, it's a little bit of everything. And that's, I think, where A&M can give people trouble. I think that's where they're going to be a team to be reckoned with, a team that can wreak havoc. Because, man, if you get this team to shoot 2 for 19, say 5 for 19, that's a little more than 25%. That's about where Texas was. Automatically, now I know they get some offensive rebounds off their misses, which is part of the formula, but automatically that puts you, 26-point win instead of 20-point win, just making 3 extra threes there. And that's still shooting pretty abysmally. The other thing I've got to give a shout out, Zurich Phelps, my man, Midland, Texas. In 23 minutes, 18 points, 6 for 8 from the field, 6 for 8 from the free throw line as well, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. That will get it done every time. He is, and we've said this, he is probably less of a 3-point shooting threat than Tyrese Radford was, less reliant on it. But he is as important to this team as Tyrese Radford was last year. If Wade cannot get it going and his shot is not going down, Zurich Phelps, I'm comfortable saying, is someone you can lean on and rely on to carry you through the droughts, to carry you through the dry spells, and to make sure you're at least getting something on the board. Pharrell Payne as well. 15 points. And we talked about him after the Purdue game, providing that interior scoring. How important was that interior scoring against Texas? Think about, that's another difference from like the team last year that we've talked about. They didn't really have that interior scoring threat or presence consistently. And then that made nights like Saturday, where you get cold, you don't really have a chance. But you have a Pharrell Payne in there with 15 points, and that can move the needle a little bit. And you still got I mean, Henry Coleman, 4 points, didn't have much opportunities to shoot from the field, but he's still down there. He can still hopefully give you 7, 8, 9 points on a given night. You know, you factor in other guys cutting, Solomon Washington coming to the rim. Manny Obatsky was pretty effective getting to the free throw line, getting in the paint, finishing around the rim. That's another thing that's been able to elevate this team moving forward. I want to go ahead and I meant to do this a lot earlier, but we'll kick it over to Buzz Williams. This was him talking about, well, first it's going to start Hayden Hefner, I think. Just the ambiance of the. No, I got it mixed up. It is going to be Buzz, and then we'll talk about Hayden Hefner talking about the atmosphere. But this is Buzz talking like, hey, if you guys can play this well, when you shoot 2 for 19, what can you guys be when you're actually making some 3-point shots?
That's hard to overcome. So that means you have to be hitting your ceiling in a lot of different ways other than that. And when you play a team as talented as Texas, there's not a lot of other ceilings to hit. So you probably need to get up on the roof and get up on top of the chimney. And I think in some ways we did.
It was definitely one of the most lively games that we've had for sure, just because of the rivalry itself. And I was really happy to see a bunch of students that made the drive back, because we don't start school for a week, I guess. And so that was cool to see, and I'm just happy everybody got to come and see it.
Another moment I want to talk about as Solomon Washington eats a nice, juicy dub there. One moment, you know, I said that there wasn't like a dominant stretch for Texas A&M in this game, it felt like, or there wasn't a moment where you felt like things were just on fire. They had like little runs, start of the second half, into the first half. The one moment that I do think you start to feel those juices going a little bit was Wade Taylor making the three, getting called for the technical foul, and then having the A&M fan base just lit a spark for a game that was close. Texas actually had the lead for a little bit. They were holding on like most of the first half. I'd say to like a 3-point lead-ish on average. Once they built up a little bit of an advantage. And you have Wade hits this three, they're hanging around, and then he gets called for the technical. And that felt like the crowd felt like they were waiting for like a reason or something to just lose it and get locked in, engaged. But you couldn't really do it because offensively, even if you were effective, it was just so disconjointed. And, you know, getting fouled and going to the line for free throws is a good basketball play. It's not necessarily one that gets the crowd jumping on their feet. But then you had that, and I think that really leveled up the intensity in the atmosphere, the stands. It helped with the intensity on defense. And I do think that the team fueled off of those things. That's another thing I want to touch on with this game. I think it was encouraging, and it is encouraging to see not all teams. I'll put it this way. Some teams I feel like cannot get on a run or in rhythm or feel good if they're not making shots. It was nice to see that this team can sort of lean on, and it's not a surprise. We've seen it, right? But it was a nice affirmation that you can see this team lean on and lean into the fact that, hey, our defense is going to carry us. Like we're on, they talk about, hunting turkeys, right? Or I don't know what they call it, but accumulating turkeys is probably not as much of a buzzword, but they try to get turkeys. They try to get stops. They try to get offensive rebounds. They try to get to the free throw line. And if they're doing those things, that almost seems to get them into a rhythm where they feel like we're cooking right now. And we're playing exactly how we like to play, how we want to play, and we're in our zone. It doesn't matter if we're missing threes or not, or making threes. We don't have to make shots to be in the zone with how we play our Texas A&M basketball. That was encouraging to see. And again, it's not a surprise, but just, again, further affirmation of what you like to look for as a Texas A&M fan. Up next for the Aggies, their next home game is going to be home against Alabama. Now, Alabama is going to be a tricky game because they, as we all know, if you've watched college basketball this year, but any year, they like to fill it up and chuck up a lot of threes. And so it almost feels like 70, 75 points is semi-mandatory to give them a run for their money. That's the next home game. So I don't think you can maybe get away with this type of three-point shooting against a team like Alabama. You can defend them well. And A&M, by the way, has defended really, really, really good three-point shooting teams. I mean, Texas was one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country. If not, I don't know if they were the best, but they're up there. And A&M defended them well. So sure, if you can cause similar havoc for Alabama, great. I don't know. That might be a tough ask. So I don't know if you're going to be able to quite pull this off. But again, it's about variance. And if you can say we win by 20, when we shoot this well from inside too, when we get to the offensive line this much, or to the free throw line this much, offensive rebound, get free throws, don't turn the ball over. We're good enough at doing all those things to beat the team by 20, even without shooting. Then maybe if you don't shoot, maybe instead of 20, what did we say? It was 25 for 48. Instead of that, maybe it's you're shooting 43% from two and 20% from three, 25% from three, and you're limiting them and you let them shoot instead of what Texas shot. Maybe they do make 31% of their threes and they convert a little bit higher in the inside. Then you can still find a path to do it. And maybe you don't foul as much. Maybe you let them make a little more threes, but you don't foul. So your advantage on the free throw line, instead of 7 more makes, is closer to 10, 11, 12. That can give you a little wiggle room. So I think they're going to have to lean into that a little bit. Oklahoma's up next, though. The most immediate challenge for them, they play Wednesday, 8 o'clock in, I don't know if they call it Soonerland, but I'll call it Soonerland, Norman. So the teams that just played each other, by the way, Oklahoma, Alabama, they just played on Saturday. Alabama, big comfortable victory, if I'm not mistaken. But Oklahoma was undefeated. Strength of schedule hadn't been there. I will say Texas wasn't ranked, but they were similar in the sense, good record, but who have they played? Oklahoma, I fear for them, might be in a similar boat. So I feel pretty good about the Oklahoma game. Alabama, it'll come down to how much can you limit their shot makers, and we shall see on Saturday. We'll talk about that game, though, as we go further ahead. By the way, as we continue on here, we'll talk some A&M baseball now. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, help us out, and let us know what anything you're interested in, by the way. If you want us to discuss, happy to do so. All right, let's talk a little Aggie baseball. Aggie baseball. Preseason rankings are out for Perfect Game. They are the number 1 team in the country. Top 5 is 4 SEC teams. You got A&M, LSU, Virginia number 3, and then back to the SEC. Georgia 4, Tennessee 5. Oh, and by the way, 2 spots after Tennessee, the other team with the Power T logo, Texas, Jim Schlossnagle, number 7. A&M number 1. Now, these are preseason rankings. Make of them what you will. But, by the way, other SEC teams in these rankings, I should say. So at 16 teams, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Florida, 6. Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Auburn. 10 of the 16 teams are in the top, not just 25, in the top 22. So top 22, like every other team is an SEC team, which is just crazy to think about. Saw a graphic earlier. I can't find it now, but there was a list of the ranked teams A&M will have to play this year. I think Arizona's in there as well at number 12 in the non-conference. I can't remember if there's others, but A&M, needless to say, you're playing baseball in the SEC. You're going to have your hands full any given night. That being said, man, everything seems to be there for a really memorable season one way or the other. It's still baseball. Anything can still happen, but got to feel good about where they stand. And I know that's not rocket science, but got to feel confident about they should at least be in a position to control their own destiny to do great things. I guess that's my big takeaway. Not that a ranking from 1 to 5 would have changed that greatly, but I just think the character of this team too, having gone through what they went through last year and rallying around Coach Early, the way they've clearly responded to that. I don't know. I mean, I know they had some people leave the portal. I don't know if they had anyone leave the portal for the portal that wouldn't have already left with a coaching change. And that part of that's hiring internally. But I think a lot of that's Mike Early. You know, I don't think you can understate the dynamic that we'll have, that this is for a lot of these guys and the core group. This is sort of a last ride, and I'm talking about for the guys who've been there for multiple years, the Ryan Pragers, the Jay Slavulettes, obviously. There's going to be a lot of guys on there who've been around and who, again, have the opportunity to. Hayden Schott is another guy. I know he's been there for 2 years, but this will be his last year, presuming he doesn't come back for that 5th year of eligibility, whatever that looks like. But if that becomes a thing, but just man, I think more so it's the mental side for me, though. We know the talent's there. You know, Gavin Grahovac, Caden Sorrell, transfers that they got coming in, Gavin Cash. We know that the talent is there. That's not going to be the issue. But I think the thing that has struck me through some of these runs during the last 3 years is how they handle the mental endurance you need to have in this sport. And I feel like they're coming up on being a team, or maybe the team with the target on their back, at a good time. I guess that's the part that I feel better about than I had the last few years. Because think back, and I've only been here since 2022, so I don't want to go too far back into the history vault and dissect the psyche of each team. But the teams that I've been around in 3 years, 2022, you were, Jim Schlossnagle coming in, trying to get back to prominence. And then a weird year where you don't have any pitching, but you're just mashing your way. Somehow you're like a top 5 seed, but it still felt like there were certain teams, Tennessee, Arkansas, teams like that if you run into them, LSU, obviously, you run into them, you start to think, okay, I don't know exactly how A&M would be able to match up with those guys. And in a series, in a must-win knockout game, especially when the pitching's not there, it's like it almost felt like they were playing with house money at times. Like they were good at home and felt good about them beating whoever they needed to get to Omaha, and winner take all against the Oklahoma teams they ran into. A pitching buzzsaw and they couldn't figure it out. But winner take all. Can they knock off of Texas? Sure. Can they knock off Notre Dame as they did? Sure. But it didn't know. To me, I never knew if they were gonna really be able to consistently kind of just find the tricks all the way that they needed to get to the very end. And they still made it a lot further than I think I thought they would, or I think a lot of people, if we're being honest. And then 2023, kind of the opposite team that came in with a lot more expectations based off of that. You have pretty much the whole lineup returning, and for whatever reason, some guys just fall off and aren't able to recapture the level they were at, whether it be Ryan Targach, Austin Boast. There's just a few guys who went a little sideways. Like they were hitting the ball fine, but and the pitching was still a little up and down. Nathan Detmer, similar to the season he had the year before. And then still you send Stanford to the brink. Sorry, I'm not trying to go too long on this history lesson, but bottom line, 2022, I think a team that was happy to be there. 2023, a team that was maybe a little bit of a letdown, but you knew the talent was there, so they could have gotten hot a la an Ole Miss in 2022. Although that LSU team, no one was beating that LSU team, in my opinion. But last year, it just felt like they were there. They didn't come in as the favorite, but certainly a team to be reckoned with. And you saw how Braden Montgomery started going. You saw how Gavin Grahovac stepped in. Jace Laviolette, obviously. You just saw that jump from so many players and felt like this is what happens to the teams that are the last one standing at the very end. Like the trajectory, even when they were winning a lot of games, they were 20-0 or something. They start off something crazy, undefeated. You felt like this is bubbling up to something special, and they're going to be able to maybe go over the top. But Tennessee had been sort of playing at that level for a lot of years, just hadn't had it in the postseason. They finally used that regular season. They almost had the college basketball effect of, like, I always say, I don't think the actual NCAA tournament, probably for any sport, but really for basketball, is actually a great indicator necessarily of like how we should evaluate and remember teams, particularly with coaches. I think it gets a little dicey because I always point to Virginia getting bounced by a 16 seed and then winning it all the next year, and then Purdue last year getting bounced by Fairleigh Dickinson and then turning back and going all the way to the championship game. It can be a little unpredictable. Tournaments are chaotic. Tennessee, I felt like kind of had some of that similar energy where they come in, they have all the pieces, and they've performed at that level for so long, regular season wise, but they just hadn't been able to do it. And the farther they stayed along and the farther they stayed alive, you felt like if you're them, they have to break through now. Certainly, they have to. They've from a Tennessee perspective, like, you've come this far. Certainly now you're not going to be able to turn this team away. And A&M came close, but was just short. I feel like A&M has some of that same momentum and energy right now. I think you feel good about the talent you have, the roster you have, but also just if it comes to it, I don't think it's going to be, looking around and thinking like, are we going to be able to pull this off? How's this going to end? I don't think it'll be nervous energy this time around. I think it'll be, we're supposed to be here. We've done the work. We've trusted the process. We've bought in as a team. We've stuck together through a total, I'm trying to think of a non-expletive way to say this, but a crap show. And we rallied around to each other to say we're going to give it one final run. And the farther this team goes along, I think the more they'll feel like we're not just excited to be here, not just happy to be here. We deserve to be here. We should be here. This is supposed to happen. Jace Laviolette's going to be maybe, certainly a top 5 pick, maybe the top pick. Like, those guys are supposed to win championships. You've got, one of the best pitchers in the country, maybe, Ryan Prager. He's supposed to, I just think everyone's going to go into this feeling like it's not hoping and wishing. And I'm not saying it was in the past, but I think at a certain point you advance far enough to say, just as confident as we are, that team over there, I know, is as confident, if not more so. in terms of feeling like they belong here. I think A&M will feel sort of at ease with that pressure as they go through the season. Now we'll see. Baseball's a weird game. Weird stuff can happen, but feeling pretty good about the Aggies as we get ready for that. We'll talk about some of the other stuff for another day. We'll talk about Mike Evans tomorrow on tomorrow's show. Mike Evans, legend, going 1,000 yards again. Unbelievable. But real quick, because the show is running a little long here. Aggie tennis, women's tennis, national champions, they're ranked number 2 in the preseason poll. They've got pretty much everyone coming back minus Carson Brandstein, who is a late addition to begin with. Really excited to see what those ladies can do. I think they can hoist another national championship. And softball, don't forget softball. I think softball is another team. I'm not sure how they would handle like a College World Series experience, but they're another team that similar to last year or similar to baseball. They make the regional. They kind of, get a little frisky with Texas in the regional year 1 with Tricia Ford. Then they're hosting. They're supposed to be here. They're confident. They get through it. Then you go to the super regional. You take them down to the wire. Maybe should have beaten them. And Texas finds a way. And now you reload again. And I think those Aggies are going to feel very confident, comfortable in their skin. And the farther they go, they're going to feel like we deserve to be here. We belong here. It's not just we're fortunate to be here, but we are excited to see what we can do. So excited to see what all the teams in the spring semester can do. That's going to do it for today's show, though. All in Aggies on the All in Sports Media Network, part of the Rogue Sports Media Network. Thank you so much for joining. At the Peck, if you want to follow me on X, we've got some fun stuff over there. And then again, like, subscribe for more content throughout the week, for more content throughout 2025. And until then, gig 'em. We'll see you next time.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.